Hey everyone, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and this is episode number 1 of the series Good Design, Bad Design. In this episode, we'll be talking about one of my favorite games of all time, Dark Souls, and giving one example of good design and one example of bad design. To be fair, I should clarify that the bad design examples in this series may not be outright terrible, but they are examples that, in comparison to the good design, are simply not done as well. As always, I'm sure some of you will disagree, so feel free to tell me that in the comments section below. First, let's talk about good design. This is Dark Souls on the PC, and this area is called the Undead Parish. The bonfire here is your spawn point. If you die, you reappear here. Sitting at the bonfire allows you to replenish your health and magic, among other things. If you proceed towards Sen's Fortress during normal game progression, you'll find a gate opened from your previous efforts. Initially, the area inside the gate appears relatively empty and unthreatening. If you carelessly run forward into the area, you will encounter 3 hazards. First, you'll trigger a trap that may very likely do significant damage to you, if not kill you outright. Secondly, 2 yet unencountered enemies known as man-serpents will come out at you from behind the pillars on the right and left. The man-serpent enemies are quite a bit tougher than most of the enemies you've encountered thus far, and together with the trap, these 3 hazards will likely result in many deaths. The developers are teaching you an important lesson right away. Carelessly charging into Sen's Fortress is not a good idea. If you do die, however, there's little to worry about. The bonfire is so close that the trek back to where you died will only take approximately 10 seconds. This area does many things right. First, it introduces you to a brand new hazard in the game, traps. Up to this point, the player will not have encountered any environmental traps in the game. You quickly learn that Sen's Fortress will contain, at the very least, pressure plate traps that can trigger projectiles at you. So, even if you feel like you got sucker punched by the unexpected pressure plate trap, you can rest easy knowing that the bonfire, your spawn point, is right behind you. This means that there is little punishment for dying. Also note the presence of the hidden man-serpents. Because of what happened your first time through here, you are now far more cautious. If you approach slowly, you can trigger just 1 man-serpent at a time. If you're clever, you could even experiment with triggering the pressure plate and watch the projectiles injure or kill the man-serpent. Moving forward again triggers the second man-serpent. You cannot, however, kill both man-serpents with the trap projectiles alone, so you will be faced to encounter them with your combat skills. Please note that the man-serpents are infamous in Dark Souls for being significantly more powerful than previous normal enemies. They have more health and hit harder than what you might be expecting. If you've failed to upgrade your weapon by this point, you'll come to the realization that you aren't doing enough damage. But guess what? The blacksmith who upgrades your weapon is right behind you and down the stairs. Again, another example of great design, putting solutions to problems close to where the problem could be encountered. As you fight the man-serpents, you're able to determine their movesets. You can experiment with attacking, blocking, backstabbing, and parrying. You can quickly learn that they are susceptible to both backstabs and parry ripostes. You may also learn that they have one attack which cannot be parried. This area is fairly open, and it allows you to maneuver sufficiently to dodge, block, and move around for the backstab should you so choose. In short, this little area right here introduces you to the primary enemy of this area as well as to the traps you'll find inside, while producing little punishment for dying. Again, the proximity of the bonfire allows you to quickly return should things not go your way. Upon entering deeper into Sen's Fortress, you now encounter another kind of trap, the swinging blade on a narrow platform. Beyond that, you're forced to confront a man-serpent on that same narrow bridge. Think about this. What if this man-serpent had been the first one you encountered in the game? Would this bridge provide you with ample opportunity to learn its movesets and to ascertain how to defeat it? Of course not. Now that you've already been introduced to this enemy in a more accommodating setting, the developers pit you against the man-serpent in a more challenging environment. You can no longer easily swing around your enemy for the backstab, nor can you easily roll or dodge the enemy on this narrow platform. If you struggle at this point, you can always go back and practice on the man-serpents in the more open area, eventually learning, if you didn't before, that they are susceptible to the parry-riposte combination. Resting at the bonfire respawns the enemies, so you have unlimited opportunities to practice. Note this excellent design. Up until now, many players will probably have found it easy to backstab opponents but difficult to parry. Parrying in Dark Souls is considered a fairly advanced skill, and if you're like most players, you probably avoided mastering it up until now. The developers are presenting you with the perfect opportunity to practice, coupled with the perfect reason to learn the skill. That is to say, if you don't learn to parry these enemies, you'll likely have a much harder time getting past this first man-serpent on the bridge and subsequent man-serpents in this area. By learning to parry here, you will be better able to tackle the challenges encountered further on in the rest of the game. To recap, this area is an example of good design because of the following. It increases the game's challenge, but provides a very close spawn point for convenience. You're presented with the pressure plate trap early on, close to the bonfire should you die to it. If you failed to upgrade your weapon thus far in the game, you can easily do so by turning around and going down the stairs. The man serpents, while very challenging, are presented to you in an area where you can easily practice fighting them. The close bonfire makes it convenient to respawn them again and again. After overcoming the challenges of the first room in this area, you become better able to tackle the increased challenges you find immediately inside. Now let's talk about bad design. This is Anor Londo, an area you encounter immediately after Sen's Fortress. This little part of the game is well known to fans as being one of the biggest challenges to overcome. If asked, what single segment of the game did you struggle with the most, many players would likely answer the Anor Londo archers. And with good reason. These archers, known as Silver Knights, shoot large arrows at you, which, unlike normal arrows, are harder to block and knock you down if they hit you. There are 2 archers firing at you from 2 different locations, and they are too far away for most people to be able to reliably defeat with their long-ranged attacks. As you approach, you'll be forced to find a way around this one archer while traveling along an extremely narrow ledge. If you make the slightest misstep, roll improperly, block in the wrong way, or get knocked down at the wrong angle, you will tumble to your death. Nearly all players will die here many times before figuring out a way to get past this archer. Even more frustrating is that it's possible for the other archer to hit you in the back as you approach this one. Adding insult to injury, it's highly unlikely that you'll be able to kill this Silver Knight in a single shot, forcing you to endure long enough to hit him multiple times. It's even possible to swing your weapon in such a way that it causes you to lose your footing and fall. So why is this an example of bad design? Well, let's deconstruct this encounter and contrast it with the good design example. To begin, this is the very first time in the game that you encounter the Silver Knights. Unlike the Man Serpents in Sen's Fortress, you weren't given an opportunity to learn the Silver Knights movesets and practice on them. You have to learn this new enemy right here on this incredibly dangerous small ledge while simultaneously avoiding the arrows on the way up. Furthermore, unlike with the entrance to Sen's Fortress, if you die here to the archers, and you almost certainly will, it takes a little bit of time to get back here. Not only do you have to travel a good distance back from the closest bonfire, but you also have to encounter many challenging enemies on the way. Some players may find themselves dying before they even get back to the Silver Knights themselves. Once you finally defeat this Silver Knight, you will encounter more inside the castle, but these others you encounter will all be easier than the first one. Why? Because you have sufficient space to maneuver, allowing you to move about, dodge, swing around for backstab, block, practice parrying, and so on. It seems strange that your first encounter with these Silver Knights also happens to be the most challenging one. Contrast this with the Man Serpents. Your first encounter is not the most challenging. Instead, the second encounter increases the challenge after you've had a chance to get accustomed to them. In the Silver Knight example, the difficulty curve is backwards. It starts out at the most difficult, then gets easier after that. This is obviously backwards. Now, people can argue that the purpose of the game is to be difficult, but that's not true. At least, it's not true according to the game's director himself, Hidetaka Miyazaki. Instead, Miyazaki says that it's supposed to give the player a sense of satisfaction after accomplishing difficult tasks. This is why I feel the Silver Knight encounter is an example of bad design, because less than satisfaction, you get a sense of frustration at the unfair challenge you're presented with. After all, and let's be honest, how many of us ended up seeking out advice on how to overcome this encounter? A short search on Google or a quick trip to YouTube will reveal a host of videos showing people how to overcome this challenge, one that I feel is ultimately unfair and unbalanced. In conclusion, for all these reasons, I feel that the Man Serpent encounter is an example of good design in Dark Souls, and the Silver Knight encounter is an example of bad design. But what do you think? Let me know in the comment section below, and leave a like on the video if you liked it. Follow me on Twitter for witty game industry commentary, and I will see you guys next time.